tends to move faster at night. So when people are not counting,
don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
That's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality. So what I'm saying
that's
is
a trick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
Tell him you speak low.
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
I think what is going to kill the parish model are all the misconceptions on how it's supposed to run.
I know that the Prime Minister is listening.
Behind the headlines.
Charles, let us agree. We liberalized the economy. We are several nations put it together. Why don't you appreciate that? What if it fails?
I'm happy to
And he's
answer.
a good lawyer because Amin is not in power.
The parish development committee is functional. It is.
You return money to the treasury, which is meant for the people.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Buli munya-Uganda nayitinga makulu malungi. UBC West einama
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Welcome to this week's edition, this evening's edition of Behind the Headlines, this Wednesday, April the 19th, 2023. A lot going on in the news around the country, across the world. Economy is in peril, economy is in distress. Uganda is no exception. We are going to be looking at the different dynamics as they play out in the economic world. We have also unfortunately lost a number of senior citizens. We will be touching on one or two related, but we have lost a justice from the High Court, retired. Musene. We also lost, critically and related to this discussion, we lost former PSST in Ministry of Finance, now just recently in Prime Minister's office, Mr. Keith Muhakanizi. To their families, we condole with you, and we may mercy be upon you, and courage to take the tragedies as they have come. But back here in the discussion today, we are going to be looking at the major challenge, the shrinking economic resources. If you like, how do we manage the challenges of the alerts being given by the managers of the economy? We have seen a conference of IMF, our development partners, and warning that there is going to be no money to hand to some of us from this side who rely on donations, who rely on borrowing. The issue is we must move on. And how do we move on? That's going to be the major part of our discussion. The budget process is on right now in Parliament, and so this debate is timely. To discuss all this, from my extreme left, we have the Honorable Geoffrey Kabyanga. He is Minister of State in charge of national guidance in the Ministry of ICT. Honorable, you're most welcome back to the show. Next to him is Dr. Fred Muhumuza. Is an economist and teaches economics at Makerere University. Next is Honorable Omara Paul, who is MP for Tuke County in Lira region. He is on the budget committee. We have Honorable Aleper Moses. Aleper Moses is MP for Chekwi County, Kadam, in Nakapiripirit, the Great Karamoja region. He is on the budget committee. Is joining us on his maiden appearance. And for you, I need to hear your voice. The rest we can welcome them. People now know them, but you are making a maiden appearance. Say hello to the viewers.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, viewers. It's a pleasure being here.
Good to have you. It's a pleasure too to have you today. Then we have Honorable Agnes Atim Apea, Imat, and she's a woman MP for Amolatar. Thank you very much, Honorable, for coming back to share your thoughts. Let me start with just a glimpse into what we picked from the just concluded IMF World Bank spring meetings in Washington. This is an important meeting that discusses, maybe Dr. Muhumuza will explain better the significance of these meetings. But Mr. Ramadan Gobi, the current PSST, shared some 3 important leads that will help us in this discussion. He says, on his Twitter handle, he says, we have just concluded with IMF World Bank spring meetings in Washington, D.C. Key message, international funding is declining and non-concessional sources are getting more expensive. So we must, A, step up collection of domestic revenue, and B, keep fiscal deficits at the bare minimum. And then he says, bottom line, we must reduce the risk of debt distress by increasing revenue collection, cutting government spending, and protecting only growth-enhancing spending, and provide incentives to attract climate smart financing. That was a, and then someone responded and said, taking a whole journey to Washington to decide on what is obvious, we can have our own homegrown solutions, support real production, increase labor productivity among civil servants, set targets and reward delivery, collect little from many more. Stop corruption. That's what someone responded to the PS. But there are a lot of things that I will be sharing with you in the course of this discussion. Let me start from the only lady in the room, Agnes Tatas. You are now discussing a budget of about 50 trillion, 50.2 trillion shillings proposed. Yeah? Last year we had 48, but most of it did not even come through, leave alone the fact that most of it went into consumption. The question is, are we up to the task? Can we run a government the way we are running currently? What needs to be done better?
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good evening, viewers. And as you rightly read the tweet from the PSST, yes, it's a fact that the country's economy is at a difficult time, but it also depends on who is talking about it and what kind of information we want to pass. But because if you read the BFP and now the ministerial policy statement and analyze the budget focus and objectives, it speaks a different thing from what the PSST is tweeting on. And I think for him is tweeting on basically on the revenue aspect of it. But you'll see that they're talking of a forecast GDP growth, and they're focusing from 4.9% to 5.9%. You'll see that they're also talking about of a fairer economy that we expect to see. And yes, he has demonstrated a substantial kind of budget management in terms of expenditures. We've seen a reduction in travel abroad as one way of saving from the little money that we have. We've also seen communication of how new items like purchase of vehicles and all that should be reduced. But I think all those, and the song around revenue mobilization has been around for a while, as somebody said, is not a new thing. But when you now look at the real budgets, and I'm glad that I think you're aware, Parliament is now discussing the presentations from the committees. And yesterday, my Committee of Agriculture presented. You'll be surprised that what we say, or what you're hearing, is actually not the fact. Yesterday, we submitted a budget for agriculture sector, and you know that agriculture is one of the sectors that contribute very highly to the GDP. I think it's about 23%. 23%. And industry is 27%, services is 41%. But when you see in the budget, agriculture sector received 2.1% of the total budget. So you wonder, where is the production going to come from? Where is this revenue that we are talking about going to come from? I think, was it tourism? They presented yesterday as well. For tourism is even less than 1% of the budget. And yet the service sector, you are hearing, contributes 40% to the GDP, is mainly through tourism. So I think as a country, we need to be honest to ourselves. We need to be honest to our people and do what we say. And I think for me, that is where the gist of the matter is. When you read our papers, when you read the budget framework paper, you see submission from ministries. They talk a different thing, but when it comes to real money, then you don't see the money. And for sure, if we stop talking and start acting, I think it would be fairer enough. And if you look at the revenue generation, that of course it is true that our sources of revenue, mainly from it's true that he has already confirmed, mainly from external financing and donor support, we've seen a decline. Even in my sector of agriculture, there's a drastic decline from external support and also budget support, meaning the only option was for us to see a deliberate action of investing in areas where we can generate revenue. The PDM excited all of us, and we thought this is one of a very good rural financing model that would empower our communities to be productive, because the essence of the economy is about the capacity to spend, it's about the purchasing power for you to be able to buy and consume. And therefore, the revenue would be generated in that cycle. But as you are aware, the financial year is ending. We have got 25 million to the parishes as opposed to 100 million. So basically, I'm finding it very difficult to really see where we are going to get the revenue. And remember, our domestic area is in how much? About 7.
It's now 8
It's
trillion.
about 8 trillion. But if you see what is put in there, and yet these are the engines of growth.
200
Okay.
billion.
Exactly. So for me, that's really my view.
Honorable Alepen, weigh in as well. Honorable Apea paints a concerning, a worrying picture when she says, I don't see where we are going to get the revenue generated from. And I'm Honorable Minister, I'm starting this side deliberately so that you can take in enough. And then when I come to your side of government, these issues of talking something else, doing a completely different thing is one of those that is problematic as far as implementation of policies is concerned. And we need
These are my technocrats.
These are your technocrats. That's a good
Giving
one.
you data.
That's a good way to start.
He doesn't have to respond.
We just need to give him data.
Okay, Honorable Alepe, how your reading of the situation, is it optimistic, the economy?
Yeah, well, thank you, Charles, once again, and good evening, viewers, once again. On my side, to spend, you must have income or revenue for this matter. When we look at these resources, I want to look at it from the revenue aspect of it. This revenue we are projecting, and then now the outlook, based on that tweet that the PSST gave, it definitely means that we are going to rely more on domestic revenue. Now, what does that mean? According to the Ministry of Finance and the proposals we have looked at, the domestic revenue is based or pegged to the domestic revenue mobilization strategy. Now, this revenue strategy is actually expiring. It is actually exiting this year. And since it's exiting this year, what is in plan? That means definitely the strategies that were laid to mobilize domestic revenue by now should have been overtaken by events. What is in plan? When we critically examined how this revenue is going to be mobilized, they said last year the revenue was 25.2, and now it is projected to be 29.3. And it's based, the growth in revenue is based on the growth of the GDP. Now, when you look at the growth of the GDP, based on the revenue projections, it would mean the GDP would grow by 10%.
Yeah.
Because when you look at 0.5% of, it's expected to grow by 3.8 billion. Yeah. So it will mean that the GDP will grow by 10%. But according to our outlook of the budget, it is anticipated that the economy actually is going to grow by 5.6, 5.9.
Yeah, 5.9%.
5.9. Now, what does that mean? It means definitely the foundation is not realistic.
The foundation is weak.
It is weak.
Yeah.
It is based on thoughts. Assumptions. It is based on ideas that don't have not concrete and physical evidence. Now, normally when you...
And these projections are presented to you by the government, the Ministry of Finance.
Yes. So, first of all, it falls flat. We are just not being realistic. We just want to paint a picture that we're able to do this. And yet we cannot really achieve. So far, we have seen the performance of domestic revenue. We have even fallen short at media. And really for us to make sure that we are able to collect the anticipated revenue of 25, it means URA has to work hard and make sure it even exceeds its targets by another 900 billion. Plus the shortfall of 300 and some billion. So you are talking of working hard to make sure you get 1.2 trillion.
And there's no another new...
Those are things you have to do. Now, when we also examine, you know, this revenue projection should be based on some parameters. Okay? First of all, the assumptions are failed because the assumptions are our economy will grow by 10%, but actually the outlook is 5.8. Then two, in fact, something that is very disturbing was there's a revenue projection that is expected from the PDM rollout. Now
that has been calculated and factored
based on what
the calculation of this projection.
Now that is best if, for example, 1.4 trillion had already been churned out to the parishes. But by the end of the year, or by Feb this year, we had only released 244 billion. By the end of the year, now we are talking about
not yet a quarter.
Not even a quarter. When we are already 3/4 of the financial year.
The financial year is ending.
Yeah. So those are realities I want really to give that definitely what we have projected.
For the record, we are left with 2 months to end the financial year.
The financial year has ended because the release of fourth quarter has already been done. And there is no PDM which has been released.
That one is a different question we are going to ask.
Yeah, so what am I... So
we who get salary from government, we don't see the release already. But
so what I was saying, those
done.
are the assumptions I'm saying, first of all, are not realistic assumptions. They cannot yield what we were projected. So now when we come to the real science of developing this revenue, they should be based on some empirical, scientific methods of arriving at it. For example, when you say the current tax regime will require maybe amendments, this should have been based on some maybe regulatory impact assessments of the existing, to show the impact of some amendments that you're going to bring. Then you should have also carried out a tax evaluation, so that you have a tax evaluation report on which to base these projections, because these are tax revenues. But now we don't have all this. So this means that definitely we may not be able to achieve what we're projected. Okay. We are only exciting people.
With figures.
With figures, and will not reach there.
Honorable Mara, are they... I don't want to say lying. Let me use, for lack of a better word, let me ask, are your colleagues, the figures guys from Ministry of Finance, massaging figures and presenting it to us before you MPs in order to paint a picture that we are doing well, whereas we are not?
I just want to pick it up from where my two colleagues have left it. The fact is that the assumptions that have been made towards the budget projections, they are completely wrong.
Why are they wrong?
For example, like the projections of the growth in GDP of 5.9 for the next financial year, 2023-2024, has been made on the backdrop of the growth as a result of implementation of PDM.
That's one of them.
That's one of them, because now that's like a major issue. Now, Honorable Liper has told you, out of a budget of 1.4 trillion, the year is ending, you have released only 244 billion, which is less than a quarter of that budget. So what will be the impact on the GDP? This is like a capital expenditure. And also, in this running budget, the capital expenditure budget is only 7% of the total budget. Now, the capital expenditure is supposed to be now, you know, regenerate and rebuild the economy and accelerate the growth in GDP. So where you're not spending money in capital development, expect nothing, because majority of that money is recurrent expenditures.
And it's consumption.
It's consumption. You're not generating wealth. That's our biggest problem. So we speak with one side of the mouth and do it another with another side of the mouth. And I want to agree with what Dr. Apea has said. We still run a budget where we are only capable of funding 52% only of our budget. 48 is borrowed money and budget support. That is where we are. So then how do you anticipate a growth of 5.9% of GDP? So the basis of your consideration is not convincing. That is where we are. Now, the second one, for example, this financial year, we put in a budget that Uganda Revenue Authority, both tax and non-tax revenue, will be 25.5 trillion. As of to date, URA is behind budget by 300 billion. Now, let me bring the folly of this thing. In the appropriation supplementary budget, which is before the parliament now, the usage of the 3% and additional requirement for a 2.9 trillion supplementary appropriation bill. The Minister of Finance put in the as source of revenue, because the law requires that in the supplementary application, you should be able to demonstrate the source of revenue. One of which they have said they will collect, URA will provide 578 billion shillings.
7.
As what? As
surplus.
As a revenue. So which means now URA should collect, actually should have performed beyond the budget and acquired more than 500 billion shillings for this supplementary budget to pass, appropriation bill to pass. So all that assumption is erroneous. Now, I want to put a positive spin to this, that unlike what Honorable Dr. Agnes Appiah is saying, that she's having a sense of lethargy, that I don't know where the money will come from. I would want to submit to us that there is money in this country.
I think so too.
There is money in this country, but there are a section of our people and very wealthy people who are not paying taxes. And this is where I also tweeted on Ngobi's, when he tweeted, I responded to it. I said, I hope that you will be able to, in your DRMS strategy, you'll be able to really broaden your tax base. Because, speaking is cheap.
DRM is direct.
No, domestic revenue mobilization.
Domestic revenue mobilization
Can you
strategy.
speak your language for my people to hear? Because the language seems nice,
yes,
but they need to listen
yes.
and hear.
Yes, so the Secretary to the Treasury and the PS says there will be no more concessionary loans coming from World Bank and IMF. If it is going to be, it will be too expensive. Second, reduce your appetite for debt. And third, please improve your domestic revenue generation. Fantastic. I agree with him on the three. Absolutely. The question is, where is your action? For example, we have had coffee, not coffee, gold.
Even coffee.
Gold, coffee.
No investment.
Are the leading revenue earner for the country. Gold is number one. But we, for almost coming to 2 years, have received 0 tax on gold. Your number one revenue generator?
You're lying.
I am telling you.
The number one revenue generator
is not paying taxes.
Is not paying taxes.
So the 10th
and
Parliament.
Number 2, for information, coffee is receiving 0 investment this year for production. The seedlings, everything for farmers, it is 0. The budget has reduced by almost 80% for the coffee sector.
So let me explain.
Let me compare. Let me make this comparison.
Yeah.
I follow indices of the biggest taxpayers.
Yeah.
I try to follow. I'm not an economist, but I try because it is money market issue.
Yes.
So I need to be concerned as a journalist.
Oh, yeah.
I know that MTN, they say, is one of the biggest taxpayers.
Yes.
And when you cross-check, they earn this, they pay this.
Yes.
You understand?
Yeah.
Then you go to, is it Nile Breweries? They will say they are the second biggest taxpayer. They get this money, then they pay this. And you're saying gold, which is one of those, does not pay a single cent.
Let me explain.
Yeah.
The 10th Parliament enacted a law. It's a mining act. They amended the Mining Act of 2003 and made a provision that for a kilo of gold, the gold exporters will pay refined gold 5% per kilo.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the arrears of that money, it's about around 350 billion shillings.
They've closed the gap.
And then the gold exporters disagreed and said, we are not going to pay any of it. There are issues. It went actually to the level of the presidency. But they finally agreed that they will put $200 per kilo on some account as they try to resolve this thing. 11th Parliament then corrected that lacuna, the disagreement, said, okay, let us now, you pay the 200 per kilo of gold, but then said this thing will be, the law will apply retrospectively, 1st of July 2021. Now, the Ministry of Energy has provided the quantum of the gold exported, and they have provided the ministerial instrument for that. And the total amount of arrears is 43 billion shillings. Now, from 350, it dropped to 43 billion. We, as a Committee of Finance, we had a conversation with the Commissioner General of Uganda Revenue Authority. He said out of the 43, he has only been able to collect 3 billion. This is recently, 3 billion. And the gold guys have actually taken him personally now to court. So the question is, if we don't want to pay taxes as a country, and the donors are saying you don't have money, those who have it and say the concessional terms have gone because the global financial systems have changed. The appetite for money is now grown everywhere. So we are not going to give you money on the cheap. So what you must now do is, if you want it, pay just like everyone else, pay a higher price. And after all, your economy, in terms of credit rating, is now B minus. So we would rather have our money go into a country where it's B plus, A plus. You know, there are A plus plus. So now, because your credit rating is poor, we are going to charge you higher money. Now, the question is, why don't we as citizens accept to pay taxes? And I am actually proposing that we need to introduce tax on animals, on cows. And it is been in the media. I'm a proponent of it. My brother is here. Me, I also have cows. And we need to look everywhere as citizens to say nobody else is going to help us to rebuild our country apart from ourselves. And if you look at Kampala roads, for example, it's literally collapsed. And that is where your 60% of GDP is generated. And now people are in traffic jams, they're in shambolic roads. Today I heard in the news the president has approved, directed that 6 billion should be used for reconstructing Kampala roads. 6 billion is a drop in the ocean, it's nothing. We need about 500 billion shillings to deal with Kampala roads. And therefore, where are we going to get that money from if we want a nice city, just like our neighbors, like everybody else?
Let me ask.
Yes.
If the gold dealers do not want to pay, and yet you know them, is that tax evasion or tax avoidance?
What we have given, we have told Commissioner General that you need to go and recover those taxes the way you do with everybody else. There should never be secret cows in this country. And he has the powers of the law to collect that money, to garnish all the accounts and collect it. And that money will be swept in one day and will go to consolidated fund. And I hear what they have done is they have run to the president. No, the president works within the ambits of the law. There is already an income tax law that everyone who is earning revenue should be treated under that particular law.
Good.
Yeah. But I think to add on that, Charles, it's not only about gold. As Parliament and Budget Committee, we are aware that in this country, every financial year, we lose so much money into tax exemptions. If we are even just to start with that, because there are companies that are given tax exemptions year in, year out, others don't have expiry dates. So if we are really serious, before we even come to the citizens, as my brother is proposing, can we first start dealing with these companies that we have, of course, provided that to create an enabling environment which is accepted worldwide. But can we also sit down with them and say this must stop? And then maybe
do you engage the technocrats from Ministry of Finance on these matters? Do you, as Parliament, as Budget Committee?
We have engaged them.
That is what we do.
We have. That is our job. I have seen the Commissioner General, and he's a fine gentleman. He came and reported and said, look, in terms of tax exemptions, every year, this financial year, I am going to lose 2.88 trillion in tax exemptions. You multiply that, build a continuum over a 5-year period. You are actually in over 10 trillion shillings, which you can use that money to clear up your domestic refinancing that you keep on moving forward every year. The money that we borrow from these banks. But there must be a willingness to confront this animal and deal with it. And by the way, Charles, I see him with begging eyes. He's actually saying, can you come and support me? Now, the Secretary to the Treasury should stop opportunism. You say something very well, you speak very well, but when it comes to action to support the revenue collector, you are quiet. You are not saying, guys, please provide that money. Commissioner General, go and collect that money and let them, the ones who are complaining, come and talk to us.
Okay.
So everybody outside there who is not paying their taxes, please go and talk to Commissioner General. Don't run to the president.
Okay.
Yeah.
Best time to come to Dr. Muhumuza.
Don't go to the president.
I like Dr. Muhumuza's position. He sits, he teaches economics, he has managed economics, but also most importantly, he has advised government.
Yes.
And there was one time I said, if we were to blame government for the economy that is not going well, he should be one of them.
As a teacher and advisor.
But I need to listen to him again. There are these issues that have been rolled out. Tax evasion or tax avoidance. I want the public to know which one is going on in respect of people who are not paying, because one is criminality, one is not, and people need to know that. But two, we need to inquire and interrogate the wonderful statements of our colleague, of our friend, the PSST Gobi. When he makes brilliant statements and there is no action taken, that starts the problem. Laws are made, no compliance with them. Policies are put in place, brilliant, no compliance with them, no implementation, hence collapse or failure of positive change. So where are we at, given these statements that have been made and the shrinking economy we are referring to?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening everybody out there. First of all, I must appreciate the contribution by the honorable members of Parliament. This for me is music to my ears. And it's something we've been looking forward to and hasn't come easy. You have to go back 21 or maybe 22 years ago.
Wow.
When Honorable Beatrice Kiraso and Honorable Isaac Musumba felt concerned and said, you cannot bring the budget a week before appropriation and you want us to pass it. So the two championed the two championed what became the Budget Act of 2001 to say you be bringing the budget in good time so that Parliament can actually appropriate, and that triggered this whole cycle of the budget process now evolved. Start in September, then make sure you bring your proposals to Parliament by the end of the year. The first National Budget Framework paper is there before January. They debate it, they get back to government. By February, they are back in government, and government will consider and issue a second budget called circular. So the process became really interactive. And at some point, they created the Budget Directorate. So let's get the best of the brains that mirror the Ministry of Finance into Parliament. So that while members of Parliament are working, at least they can get technical support. And I hope you're getting good support from that Budget Directorate. If you're not, you need to demand. Because those fellows are paid to give you this information. But when I hear the conversations, all this business of ministerial policy statements was to make sure Parliament has adequate information before they appropriate the budget. And then we used it to give proposals, then the budget is read, then the debate begins on the budget. So by the time it is appropriated, the quarter one is gone. Again, there was a change to say, no, what should be read is what must be appropriated. Now, all that time, the honorable members of Parliament has used it very well to engage the very questions we also ask the other side. What is the basis of your estimations? You are now saying URA must find 29 trillion. Even if the budget, the GDP grew to 200 billion, we are now somewhere below 170. So really that will be a rocket growth to take the GDP in 1 year to 200 billion. You still will require 14.5% tax to GDP to get to the 29 trillion.
And we are not yet there.
We are not there. In our own statements, we are saying we'll be growing by 0.5. Now we are just around 13. So you can't grow by 1.5. So already the members of parliament are raising fundamental issues to say, is this budget already not setting us up for budget cuts and unrealities?
Absolutely.
We want to appropriate thinking URA will raise 29 trillion. How? And you are saying, no, because I'm going to emphasize domestic resource mobilization. Now, even if you really emphasize that, I was reading and teaching my students the monetary policy statement of Bank of Uganda. The risks of reduced demand, because when prices go up and your salary doesn't follow, it means you can buy less of what you used to buy. Because you used to spend your 10,000 shillings buying 3 chapatis. Now a chapati has multiplied by 2. You can only buy 1. So that's why we said that the real income of these Ugandans has gone down. The purchasing power of their money. That means they are going to buy less. Now, as they buy less, some of the URA taxes are consumption taxes. You're not going to tax me for the fuel I have not bought. And I'm not going to buy the fuel because my budget has gone down. I am prioritizing other things. So me who had a car will jump into a taxi or abandon that journey to the village to go for a burial. So how are you expecting URA to collect more in an economy that is shrinking? And we all realize the economy is not moving as fast as we would have imagined. So you already have given an illusion of 51 trillion for Parliament to appropriate. When it is very clear, we're not going to find that money. You have also given an illusion to everybody that I will release this money for PDM.
When you don't have
you know very well it's not going to be there.
You don't have money.
You're not going to find the money. Now, budget cuts, that's where the conversation is coming. And I'm saying even the language of budget cuts must be shelved. Because budget cuts gives the impression I have deliberately cut your budget.
Yeah, there's actually
but actually don't have the money.
The money is not there. You just don't want to say.
The money is not there. So can we face those realities? I'm looking at the budget released for this final quarter. 9.3 trillion. Of the 9.3 trillion, 4.2 is in interest and debt service. Now that's not money available for me and you to use in this quarter. It is trying to cover our backlog. Right Flazi has said 6 billion really promised. I thought I had it wrongly. Is it 60? Is it 600?
6 billion per month.
6 billion
per month for road repairs.
The road repair.
It won't even find the soil that we need.
But was that figure correct? I read it and I thought...
May I listen to it? 6
no,
billion.
I also listened.
6 billion.
6 billion.
I listened.
6 billion per month.
Remember, you're looking for Maram.
repairs.
Maram in Kampala is not there. Because it's going to be on his plot or my plot. And I will charge you for it. So you might have to drive some 20, 30 kilometers out of Kampala to find Maram and bring it to fill the potholes. So there is already a complex situation that you don't want to gloss over. Face the reality. So while the PSST rightly is saying government must cut its expenditure. If you cut expenditure without removing the cause of that budget, you are creating arrears. That's why we're saying restructure. That's why we sold UCB. Much as the president is saying he was misled, that was the only option. Because UCB was accumulating debts. So the only way to stop the spiral of debts increasing, sell it. Because you have to keep paying the employees. If you don't pay them, it's an arrears. So even when you look through again this budget, the arrears, as we're saying, we are hitting 8 trillion.
8 trillion, yes.
Who is creating these arrears? Some of them, rent of government entities that are not working because they have no money. Some of the arrears are pension and gratuity. Why didn't you send these people home early and say, I have closed this entity and this entity and this, because I have no money? So I find a lot of policy issues, because these are policy issues. You cannot resolve the budget without resolving the policy issues. Because the budget is trying to implement your policies. So I'm looking at the money we are providing for the Umeme takeover. What are we trying to cure? That this is going to cost us 800 billion to 1 trillion over the next 3 years. What exactly are we trying to cure? Yes, this money could have been used for another thing. Couldn't we have forced Umeme to sell more? Because Umeme was already a listed company. So if it's a question of ownership locally, it's already largely owned by NSSF and other Ugandans. Couldn't we have said we list it? I don't know the policy issues there. I'm trying to understand very complex things that are driving our budget in two levels that are already unsustainable. When I was speaking to accountants, and I like accountants, they bring in the real issue of, are you a going concern? Because you can speak other things until the accountants come and say, wait a minute. This is your budget, these are your obligations.
Figures don't lie.
Figures are not going to lie. So addressing accountants in a conference last year, I said things can only get worse before they get bad. And beyond that, I don't know. Because people always say things can only get worse before they get better. No, the English I learned, between worse and better, there is bad and then there is good. Before you get better, you can stall between bad and good. So I look at a situation of we shall not be able to fix the potholes in Kampala because our budget is 36% going into debt service. The remaining portion, we have to deal with the security. We are still in a very, very security fragile environment. So we can't compromise on security. Then you have salaries, and I've just increased the salaries of very many people. Before you increase salaries, you first cut the numbers.
Doctor, for your information, by the way, in the projected budget, 26.4 trillion is already reserved. That one is not committed.
Exactly.
You can't touch.
Because of these things.
Now you only have 24.4 to play around with. Yes, and salary will take a huge part of it.
And even in that 24, the salary you are not
the
going
salaries are there, the 2.2.
Yes.
2.2.
So you're not going to touch them. Because they take second call after we have mobilized the budget.
Actually, it is supposed to be non-discretionary.
And then in the other portion you have, there is donor money. The donors have funded projects. So you're also not going to touch it. So eventually, I only remember a statement that really hit me hard, and I have not forgotten it, from the late Kasane. We were debating on whether to issue a Eurobond. People are telling us, Ghana has issued, Zambia has issued, Kenya is issuing, Rwanda is issuing, you have oil, why don't you issue a Euro bond? Said, guys, this thing is a bullet payment. And we are now discussing Euro loans.
Yes.
So this thing is a bullet payment. My problem is not the money. My problem is the utilization of this money, absorption, but also to use it for the right thing that will make it generate enough revenue to pay back.
Yes. Right.
So we ganged up as a team of 3, at Kasame inclusive, Lawrence Keys, and we said, no Eurobond here. The banks had already come in to tell us, we can organize it for you, we shall arrange it for you. Said, you get lost. We are not issuing a Eurobond. Now I see people in that. And one thing that he stated, he said, you guys, as you take decisions in this ministry, I will not be here. Meaning he was retiring. Literally, do we know rest in peace? He will have actually moved on. He said, you dread a time when you will wake up to budget and you have no budget. Which are the things we are
already there. Is this where we are?
Yes. You have a budget, but as they are no money. Getting, all your money is already distributed.
Yes.
Now you are left to play around with 200 billion, 100 billion. Even when you say, I want to give money to Kampala, you don't have it. I want to give money to PDM, you don't have it. So what are you doing? You must create what we are calling fiscal space.
Yes.
Your recollections are not going to give it to us because the economy is not doing well. We have bank arrears, we have arrears of 8 trillion. By the way, the 8 trillion includes the taxpayers.
And you project fictitious revenue targets for URA, and you know they're not going to
yes, 8 trillion includes taxpayers. Because these are the companies that serve government.
Yes.
When you pay them, they
which
pay
you
part
have
of the
not
tax.
paid.
You have not paid
You
them.
want to collect revenue from them, but you have not paid the areas of 7
Can we be realistic to begin with and say, I am unable to continue running with 50 government agencies and
shut them down?
We are shutting them down. The only provision come 1st of July 2023 is to wind up the contractual obligations. But these entities, you are going home. The likes of Mutevile did that. And the president said, these guys, they were tough. We have just lost the last one of them. Very tough. But also I think when the other two left him, that's when we began spiraling.
Do we have anybody with staff remaining in that ministry?
No, but even in the last period, I think, I don't know, but late Keith, whether he at some point did not have the support of the others. Because remember, one of the key budget principles was commitment control system. You accounting officer, if you don't have money on your budget, don't commit government.
Yeah.
So the 8 trillion would not be there if we had stuck to the commitment control system. The other thing we had was the budget ceilings. If I have hit my ceilings and you are telling me, hey, locusts have come, Ebola has come, okay, we need to address it, but I must cut somewhere. I remember the time the president came and said that.
Isn't that when the supplementary started?
Now,
but that's when they started borrowing.
That is when now.
That's where the problem came.
That's when the borrowing.
The borrowing started now.
Trends where
you come with a new
what is
thing.
brought to Parliament is not the priority. They leave the priority behind.
Yes.
Then they will bring it for supplementary.
Now, at that point, we would say the ceilings are done. So when the president said, I'm tired of IMF and World Bank and other donors saying, defense expenditure must not go beyond 3% of GDP. And the president came and said, I cannot deal with Connie and Lakwen and all these fellows.
Yes.
When my budget for defense is capped. I need money to deal with this problem. We agreed with him. But we said, Mr. President, 30% cut across. We are not going to borrow new money. So agree with us when people run to you that my budget was cut.
But doctor, sorry. If we are looking at the supplementary we are seeing now,
these are different.
It's totally different because it looks like we create a higher budget ceiling so that you have the supplementary because
it is 3%.
Because it's 3%. So your supplementary of 3% is a much higher figure.
Yes.
So you have a bigger figure to play with, and that one takes first call on revenue. And that is the problem we're having. Is basically
those days
indiscipline.
Every supplementary must have how is it going to be financed.
Exactly.
You need another 6 billion for health to deal with Ebola. I am cutting who?
Now
you must come with a resource.
Okay. Let me finish this round by bringing in the Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, I wanted deliberately so to first listen to your technocrats here.
Like you rightly
said that they will talk everything.
And they have really done justice. Tough talking, and I like the candor with which they have presented the issues. But when you see there is, I like the Dutch way. They say, even in a bad situation, first start with stating the good thing. The good thing is, they have said, Uganda has money.
Somewhere.
You see?
It's efficiency.
Now, then the big problems come. Our problem is efficiency. Our problem is utilization.
Prioritization.
Our problem is fiscal discipline. Or in discipline, actually, discipline is not a problem. In discipline and all these things, priorities, getting it right. Then another major thing that your technocrats are saying, government saying this, let's drink water. But they disappear at night in the dark, and they are taking expensive wine, blue labels only. How do you now? And the question is, how do we manage the challenges? How can we do this with all these contradictions and paradoxes, Honorable Minister, from your government?
I think my technocrats have really dissected the subject very well. And they have brought out those technical issues very well, which I will not go back to. Some of these economic theories, most of the economics is about theories. And normally, every theory in economics, you have to hold other things what?
That's
the biggest problem in economics. You can ask the lecturer here, Professor Dumba is the one who taught me economics. And
one of the finest
in economics, all theories, you first hold other things what?
Constant.
So, when we say there will be growth at 6%, and we target on parish involvement model, And you know that parish development model is basically in agriculture. You are just holding some things constant that probably when you invest money in agriculture, there will be rain. That probably that money will also come and you really give it to the people. But now we are finding challenges that one, the weather may not be good, and two, that the money is also not there as we anticipated. But we had made a projection, knowing if we get all that money, 100 million shillings per parish, and the weather is good, and the people invest it correctly, because you can also give it to people and they don't what? Invest it properly. Then the economy would grow at that percent. And we all agree on that. That one is one of the biggest challenges which you have. But I also strongly believe that we would be doing very well. Even Revenue Authority can probably collect that money, which we are talking about.
Yes.
If Revenue Authority is efficient, if we can close the corruption gaps. Because you should know that there is also a lot of money which is lost in tax collection through corruption. And a lot of money. I don't know how many trillions, but it's a lot of money. Even this budget you are seeing, which is 52 trillion, 49 trillion. The other time IGG was talking about, is it 3 trillion, 10 trillion lost in corruption.
That's what I wanted to
Assuming that 10 trillion went into production, don't you think we can achieve that growth? So those are some of the challenges which we are which we are facing as a country, and which all of us should face. Leave alone these statistics, these economics. Those are statistics, but they are issues which we can really work on, and we still achieve our revenue collection. We even collect much more money. If we utilize the money which we have properly, we can still achieve that growth. Look at now the debt burden which you are talking about. Where is that money? Some of the loans are redundant, and we are paying what? Interest. That money has not really been put into use. Absorption, I think last time the Prime Minister released the report, was it around 36%?
Yes.
So you can see 36%. Where is that? So 64, around 64% is there redundant. There are some loans which we have not yet started utilizing, but we're already paying what? Interest. That is another big problem. But the president identified these 4 sectors: commercial agriculture, industry, services, and ICT. Unfortunately, I would like to agree with you that we have not put enough money in these 4 sectors. And yet they are the only sectors which can bring in more revenue. For instance, tourism is one of the best now. But how much are we putting there? Peanuts. I am from the ICT sector. We are crying. Actually, ICT sector is even the least financed. Now, and yet it is one of the priority areas. Industry. How much have we put in industry? People are instead going into real estate. We are not even encouraging. We are not even creating incentives for private sector to invest heavily in industry. Because if we can create incentives for the private sector to invest in industry, I think we will do better. Uganda is one of the best countries here in terms of agriculture, fertile soils and weather and the like. We have enough water. You can see Lake Choga is submerging areas. Can't we harvest that water for irrigation? Your constituency. Yes. And when you ride through Teso, through Karamoja, there is a lot of land and a lot of water which can be irrigated, and we produce food. Gaddafi built a man-made river to irrigate the whole of what? Of Libya. If we can really go into such projects.
And Honorable Minister, in this budget, one of the priority was the irrigation,
yes,
water for production.
Exactly.
But I can tell you that in the budget which we presented yesterday to Parliament,
yes,
irrigation was allocated 10 billion shillings.
And the Minister of Agriculture
for small scale, and I don't know how much that will be irrigated.
But yes, why not delete it then?
Yeah.
No, I don't that to Kampala potholes.
That is what I was thinking, that instead of writing it in the budget framework paper, that our priority is irrigation, and everybody is excited, we are going to irrigate, and you put 10 billion. Why talk about
so
it?
Me, when I saw the topic shrinking resources, I'm saying which resources are shrinking?
Yes.
Because they are not shrinking what? Resources. There is underutilization of
resources.
Misuse of what?
Of resources.
If we have a resource which God gave to us, soil, fertile, we have another resource, water free. So why do we talk about shrinking what? Resources. Even the little money probably which we are collecting is going into, it's being eaten.
Yeah.
So are those resources shrinking or what? I think we need to refocus and see what we can do better. If we can do that, this economy will be one of the best economies. If Israel, which is a rock, can produce food, why should we still have people dying of hunger? I have Mubuk irrigation scheme in Kasese, being underutilized. The Chinese went there recently. They asked me, is this water being pumped? I said, no, it is gravity flow. And why is it not being utilized? Because the water is just flowing.
But the way, for your information, Honorable Minister, you know, before the South Sudan joined the East African Community, Uganda had the highest, in percentage term, arable land was 43% of the East African arable land was where? Here. Which means we could supply our neighbors with food, with processed agricultural items. For example, we have fought wars and stabilized our neighbors. We are the ones who stabilized South Sudan.
Yes.
Rwanda here, we are the ones. We are now in DRC. We are in Somalia. But the big question is, what benefit do we take as a country?
Yes.
Because now South Sudan actually has been a major trading bloc. Now the Sudan itself now is in crisis. So it is actually, how do I call it? I cannot even understand it, fathom it. How can we invest so much military hardware and resources to stabilize our neighbors, and we don't take the economic benefit? The Americans, the guns lead the way. Afterwards, the business people, the economics follow.
Exactly.
And so therefore, all these veterans that have been fighting, they should be given opportunity to go into the neighborhoods.
Yes.
So even our business people, we should organize them and make sure that Sudan, they are trading in Sudan, they are in DRC. We should not just say, give us budget for Operation Susa. And the business people are not there. So the intra-East African trade must be enhanced.
No,
and we are the beacon of hope in the region.
I'll give you an example.
Yes.
We have been on the forefront of convincing Congo to join the East African community.
Yes. And they have.
Other countries were even asking why. But we insisted.
Yes.
We are even building a road
into Congo.
Exactly.
But what is the benefit? That's the question I'm asking.
We have taken our UPDF in Congo. But now let me tell you one thing which is happening.
Yes.
As soon as Congo signed the protocol to join the East African community, the following week, the Kenyan government
went with a whole plane.
Flew a whole plane
with business
to Kinshasa,
yes,
to Beni, to Butembo, to now sign business
deals.
Exactly.
And what we must do, we know that the president is a Pan-Africanist. Is one of the key, pillars of NRM in terms of ideology. But the question is, after we have settled the war, the president should be able to say, businessmen, where are you? Ugandans, where are you? Now we have our planes. Let's load and land in Kinshasa or even the neighboring South Sudan. And we do trade. That is how we will be able to develop our economy. Kenyans are benefiting more.
And I
than us.
support you 100%
Yes.
that these tax exemptions should really be minimized.
Yes.
But what we should go into is to give
Trade.
tax
incentives.
Yes.
To our local
This money
farms.
which will be going into tax exemptions should go into tax incentives.
On value addition.
On value addition.
Yes.
And let us also support the president.
Perhaps you
on
should
matters.
also clarify to our people
Yes.
that you have since changed that even the so-called tax incentive is actually direct payment that government makes.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Now we actually take money that the hard-earned taxpayers put into the economy and you give for free to some people, whose benefits are neither here nor there.
All those now should be questions for thought. And we change the way we are doing things. But me, I believe our resources are not shrinking. We are only lacking some bit of strategy how to organize our resources, and then we grow our tax base, our tax base, and then we finance our own activities.
Okay.
But if we don't do that, we are heading to a bigger problem.
Okay.
Because there is a recession, and we should these external shocks can easily swallow us.
Yeah.
But I still want to applaud President Museveni and mainly Dr. Mumuzai and others who advised against giving incentives during COVID. Because what's happening in Kenya now, you can't believe it. And yet Kenya was a thriving economy.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Let's go for a break at this point. Take a break very quickly. And when we come back, the discussions will continue and in a more open manner. And I will also be incorporating questions and comments from the viewers out there coming through virtual parts, and we will incorporate all of them into the discussion that is going on. Let's take that break right now.
Deeper conversation.
Oh, man. Talk with freedom. Get MTN Freedom voice bundles that don't expire. Dial *100 *21 hash or my MTN app for more bundles. Together, we're unstoppable.
It's the encounters with our majestic gorillas. The thrill of taking on the falls of the Nile River. The joy of discovering new traditions and a lot more. Join us at the 2023 Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo from the 26th to the 29th of April at the Commonwealth Resort, Munyonyo. Rediscover our country's uniqueness and see what the tourism sector has in store for you. Visit www.poate.co.ug to secure your spot and get set to learn, network and explore. The Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo is brought to you by the Uganda Tourism Board in partnership with Competitiveness and Enterprise Development Projects. Explore Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
Wakato, this is a quick call. I'm almost out of minutes. Now, the center.
Why rush through such important conversations? Airtel Uganda has made it possible for you to call across all networks in Uganda at the best rates with the new Bona voice bundles. Stay connected anytime, anywhere, with minutes valid for calls on all networks. Dial *100 *1 hash. Select voice bundles and select Bona voice bundles today. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Do you know your architect? Is your architect registered? An architect in Uganda is one registered with the Architects Registration Board, ARB. ARB is a statutory body mandated to regulate and maintain standards and practice of architecture in Uganda. Save money and life that is often lost in collapsing buildings as a result of employing quacks to supervise your construction sites. Remember, only registered architects have professional indemnity in the event of loss of your property. To learn more about the benefits of using a registered architect, visit www.arbuganda.go.ug now, or call us on 0781 498 823 or find us at PKF Building, Kira Road, Kampala. ARB is here to ensure professionalism in the architectural industry.
Are you tired of high fees and slow transfer time when sending money? Look no further. Airtel Money is here to revolutionize the way you move your money. We have revised our rates, and now sending money from Airtel to other networks in Uganda, East Africa, and to the rest of the world has never been more affordable. Plus, you can trust Airtel Money to get your money where it needs to go quickly and safely. Simply dial *185# and start sending money. Switch to Airtel Money today and experience unbeatable rates and top-notch services for all your local and international money transfer needs. Airtel Money, instant, secure, borderless.
This isn't just a girl. She is the future. This is a teacher, a doctor, a community leader, our future president.
She is our family's pride, and as her father, I will protect her from child marriage and talk to her about the dangers of teenage pregnancy. We each have a role to play in empowering our teenage girls to protect them from child marriage and pregnancy, because when we empower them, we empower our nation. Protect the girl, save the nation.
Take action. Report any case of defilement or child marriage to the police or call Sauti 116.
We are back. We are back on air, and lady and gentlemen, I know that the break was running well, but the debate online is more heated, and let me pick some of the comments that our viewers out there are sharing with us. This person has not put their name, but they say, ask Charles, ask the minister, what does it mean by the Commissioner General running to the president when he is actually supposed to recover taxes from people who have failed to pay their taxes? I also want to ask the minister, is the economy in middle income status as alleged by government some time back? Another person here is called, I think, Medis from Serere. Charles, thanks for the program. I always miss my sleep to watch and listen to you, but I'm tired of our leaders lamenting, yet they are as if they are not in charge. Who plans or appropriates our budget? That's the question. Another person here says, why does government ignore the marketing component of agricultural products? This could cause a big leap for subsistence, from subsistence rather, to monetary economy. Then there is someone called Mugisha Alan Smith, says, my opinion is, why can't government create a society that can fight against corruption, since it's corruption destroying the image of our country? Thank you. That's what Alan Mugisha says. Ray Ray from Chebando says, the rich businessmen are given 10 years tax holidays, and government is busy running after market ladies selling small things that they are collecting the taxes. Then he says, Uganda Zabu. Thank you, Ray. Then this person here has written a whole composition. This is too long, but let me pick just a few. This person says, we have big dealers in gold, especially in West Nile. I think this person has a bone to pick with the people of West Nile. He writes in bracket, Arua and Nebi especially.
Including Charles.
Then he says, he or she says, these Indians buy a lot of gold from their customers from DRC who enter Uganda with their gold illegally. Why are they, the buyers, not charged taxes higher? Also, the border security personnel must stop corruption. By the way, this is true. One of the problems of the gold the business, I saw in, I think it was on social media, they come in, the dealers, and then the officials, you know, including some of these GISOs, DISOs, they get them and then say, pay me 45 million. And that begins the hidden transactions. It was being discussed this week, actually. Honorable Paulo Mara is right to have said gold is a leading revenue generator in Uganda. We lose a lot of taxes, money, when security people, some security people pocket money that is otherwise supposed to go to paying taxes. This person says, I am Taban Joseph, that Indian gold buyers in West Nile are all foreigners. Why are they not paying taxes? And then I need to take 3 more so that we continue with the discussion. I am Joseph from Western Uganda. I thank you for this presentation. This is such a good topic of discussion. The economy worldwide is on its knees, and the dollarization is taking place in the world. Remember our, it is a very long message. Please keep your messages short. Jane Francis Baba says, thanks for this program. Behind the headlines, I have learned a lot. From the time I was young to date, I'm begging to know and understand budget. He wanted to say, I'm beginning to know. But he wrote it as beginning to know and understand the budget from this talk show. I am Jane Francis. Thank you, Jane, but kindly write more clearly so that we don't miss your message. Nathan Wanda says, our roads are costing us much due to high frequency of attending to them. This is due to fixing potholes with maram alone without adding lime, which would keep roads otherwise longer for more years. That's what he means. Abaho Joab from Barara says, talking of a shrinking economy, you can't figure out a country where corruption is not made riskier. Greetings to Mr. Mwebesa. Do we have a Mwebesa here?
He has heard wherever he is.
Let me just take just 2 more. There are too many messages, which is good, interest in the topic. Let me take this one. Someone called Oronya Innocent from Goli in Nebi says, the preamble given by Honorable Aleper was superb. A round of applause for the honorables. The challenge we are facing with these projections is too much unrealistic theory being punched in. Even when we could get real and practical, then deal with real challenges like bloated government size, prioritization of prolific sectors, and dealing with counterproductive tax holidays, among others. Thanks, Oronya Innocent from Goli. He has talked of bloated government size, and my mind went straight to the issue of the kind of public expenditure that we are running. And maybe Honorable Agnes should start us on that as well. It's one of those things. We are talking of over 146 RDCs. Each of them has a deputy. All of them have vehicles with security, you know, with fuel they have to take because they have to do government work. Then we are talking about MPs, you yourself, 550 plus. I don't know whether Honorable Agnes will be the right person now to talk about that. Perhaps Honorable, Dr. Muhumuza. We are talking about ministers, over 80 of you, Honorable Kabianga. Presidential assistants and advisors, over 120. And we are asking ourselves, first of all, government is saying, let's tighten our belts. The same thing we are being told, but we have to manage. Now, who is going to start, Honorable Agnes? Where should the solution to the problem that we have in terms of the economic hardship start from, realistically speaking?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think you're right, and I'm one of those who may not shy away from the number of members of parliament. So I want to allay your fears that I'm one of those who will not shy away from saying what is really right. Yes, it's true that we need to tighten the belts right from where we are, all of us. It is not only about members of parliament or the ministers. It is a whole government system that we have to really have an overhaul and start asking tough questions of what is it that fits within our budget. Can we start cutting the cloth based on the size that we have? So the issue of over expenditure and all these big consumptive kind of budget items is an issue which we need to address. And I think we need to applaud government and cabinet in particular that 3 years ago, cabinet approved rationalization of government. Although it was basically specific on the ministries and departments and merging up this, I think it's really, we are on the right track. Our biggest challenge is when. If we approve and we take 3 years to implement, I think that is where we need to ask that question. And it is not the first time. I think Dr. Muhumuza reminded us that, when was that, around 2001, where the president actually retired the military, isn't it?
Yeah, in about early 1990s.
Early 90s, when actually we were still at the peak of the wars. But he made that decision, reduce on the number of soldiers. He actually targeted UPDF at that time. But
was that our homegrown policy decision, or it was forced on us by the SAPs?
You see now, the economic theory, as he said, you stop discussing the one who has brought you the medicine. Discuss the medicine. Does it work?
It works.
COVID is not homegrown. The vaccine was not homegrown.
So even if,
but it worked. That's why we are here.
Even if it was forced on us, we are just we are showing you what works. Yeah. And so I want to allay the fear of the public and the country that we don't have options or we don't have things to do. as a country we have ever done it. We can do it, reduce the cost of government, reduce government, if it's possible, reduce members of parliament to 2, maybe a woman and a man, and that's it. The issue is making a decision. The other second issue is that I think we need to start looking at where are the cost drivers. The biggest cost drivers in this country is social services. Why we are talking of shrinking, I knew you were looking at the money in the pocket, is that our people do not have enough money to pay for school fees, do not have enough money to pay for their health care. And why? Because we are not investing in agriculture where majority of the people are. If we invested there and their crops were doing well and they get more money, and we build more schools which is accessible and affordable, we make sure the medicine is in hospitals, the discussion would be different, because they would then have surplus income for them to purchase or to spend. So, and that is how the economy really works. So for me, that is one of the critical areas that, yes, the government is big, but as my colleagues have rightly said, if we effectively use the little money that we have, we prioritize them, put them in the right things, I think the story would be completely different.
Honorable Alepe, fiscal discipline, is it something that, or is it, which one is easier to undertake by, especially the technocrats who plan for our economy, the guys from Ministry of Finance, for example? Is it easier to be, you know, to have fiscal discipline, or is it easier to be honest and and bring correct figures, be truthful to themselves and to the country? Which one is easy to undertake and to make us achieve what we aim at?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. When I started this discussion, I went to the revenue aspect.
Yeah.
Now I want to go to the expenditure bit of it. As was proposed by the PSST, on the expenditure bit, we said we should rationalize or reduce public expenditure. What is public expenditure? It's definitely the operational costs of doing or delivering services to the public. We really know where this critical aspect is. One, again, I want to throw this to the Ministry of Finance, because we interact with them, we do oversight. When I'm in the Committee of Finance, these are people, actually I want to pick from what Dr. Mumuza said, that there are people who are paid to advise government on what should be done. When you talk of rationalizing public expenditure, I would have expected the Minister of Finance to say, this is how we can rationalize, let's cut this size, so that we're able to meet. You know, when they say the revenue is going to grow from 25.2 to 29.3 trillion, what would collect? I had expected actually the discretionary expenditure to increase. But what we're told is the discretionary expenditure will reduce actually by almost by that increment in revenue. What did that mean? It meant definitely there is still no fiscal discipline. So I would expect Minister of Finance to have come with those things. Now, this is what we question Minister of Finance when we were discussing the ministerial policy statements. As a committee, according to the law, we are supposed to examine their ministerial policy statement. What does that mean? We are supposed to inspect thoroughly in order to determine what causes the expenditure within that sector. By the way, I want to tell you that in the sector of finance, planning and economic development, which has a number of votes, almost half of the budget of the money goes through there, over 20 trillion.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is, we are starting from there. We want to look at their program implementation action plans to see where we derive these figures, the 20 trillion. that passes through that particular area.
4130 Treasury.
And that's how we can get to the bottom of this. And we are doing that as a Committee on Finance. We have put them on spot that we are starting with you. We are going to examine this. We want to look at these PIAPs. So that's where we shall really know, we shall come to the bottom of it to know where we have not rationalized public expenditure.
Okay. Honorable Paul O'Mara, someone just said, hello, Honorable Paul O'Mara should stop using technical language on national TV because this is a very nice topic and the audience is the person down in Karamoja. This person is called Etieku Rogers.
From Karamoja. That's a good one.
Wow.
That's a good one.
Unfortunately, budget and economic issues is like a doctor who is issuing drugs. You don't even understand.
Stop flying in the air. Come down to the earth.
But I hear you, Charles, and the viewers. I think we can prescribe a solution to these things. One thing that we need is austerity measures. We must cut our jacket according to our size.
What is
austerity measure?
Tightening your belt.
We should tighten our belt.
Simple.
Cut your.
We should tighten our belts according to our size. And recommendations have already been provided. We should be able, you see, we should, if you look at the budgeting process, and how we are doing it and the budget expenditure proposals, it's as if we are in the world of plenty, as if nothing bad is happening, as if the world is all... yes, like, we have all the money and we must behave differently. So number one is we need to downsize government, and I dare say parliament. Maybe instead of having 529, we might need only 250. And we should be able to be bold enough. We can actually redemarcate constituencies.
Take a district.
Yes, and we take a discipline. They said we don't have money to pay everybody. We look at districts. Do we really need all these districts? Or we put them together? And that is what we must do.
But now can you reverse them?
We can.
That's about the law. If we have the will.
If you have a tumor, what do?
You cut.
You deal with it. The second one, Charles, is prioritization of the limited government resources. As Honorable Dr. Agnes Appiah said, you know, if you look at, we speak very well. If you read ministerial policy statements, they are very beautiful. Wait until the distribution time, the appropriation process, when it starts. You find that money is not put where people had so spoken eloquently. And we must therefore, we say, where are the 4 key areas where we must invest our money? We have talked about agriculture, industrialization, value addition, tourism. These are what areas that bring money into our pockets. If we don't do that, we'll actually be in a big problem.
Okay.
Then manage our foreign debts. By the way, the impact of this thing, I really want to inform viewers. Because we are not generating revenue from outside, we are not getting the dollars here. The limited amount of dollars we have in the central bank.
We're not exporting.
We are not exporting. When our debt is due, Bank of Uganda will not wait for government to do anything. They are obliged to pay. And we have now shrunk our reserves, foreign currency reserves. Dr. Michael Ating is trying to rebuild it. You know, from $4.6 billion it came out down to 3.4. He has taken it down to $3.8 billion and a 3-month import cover. We are in a crisis. So we must manage our debt and generate revenue. And then the critical thing that we also must do, Charles, is that we should try to walk the talk, have the courage to do it, and work together across government, parliament, executive, working together just to have this realization. Otherwise, there's going to be a big problem. And I think as parliament, we have already agreed we are going to amend that 3% provision in the Public Finance Management Act and in the Constitution, so that we deal, we really deal with the because Parliament works 24/7, 365 days a year. So if they want us for anything, please come. So that at least we have budget discipline, because we have seen that you are not disciplined. We would rather appropriate that one, and we use Article 1.
They will remind you that you are not the owner of the budget.
No. Article 1, that is where there is a nexus of the
three arms of government.
The three arms of government. The nexus is on the Constitution, Article 154, subsection 2. Yes, separation of power. That's where the nexus. And by the way, when Parliament approves budget, it's already an appropriation act. And so therefore, that is where the thing is. So when we give you that one, you can't now go and do something else. Or else we take you to jail.
You know, the executive is the one that is supposed to take people to jail.
No, that's the judiciary.
It's the judiciary.
Judiciary will take them on
He's under the executive. They will arrest him and take him to the judiciary.
But now the very police is taking them in.
You are not watching.
But you have seen police taking them in.
By the way, the president operates under the rule of law.
Yeah.
He is not going to arrest anybody for nothing. Our president respects the law.
That's good.
Okay.
Someone, Dr. Fred, it's now your turn. Someone called Becca Akampurira says, I am a former student of Dr. Fred Muhumuza. Then he says, with the level of fiscal discipline in this country and the ferocious appetite for borrowing, it's unlikely that we will escape the debt trap.
Sure.
With the shrinking foreign sources of funding, our budget without corresponding increase in domestic revenue collection, I am not a prophet of doom, but we may be headed for darker days ahead. Going forward, let us tame the fiscal indiscipline. He says you must tame the fiscal indiscipline. Ensure value for money, in brackets, efficiency, effectiveness, and quality in the utilization of public resources, and support productive sectors of the economy which have a higher multiplier effect. That's your student, Dr. Fred Muhumuza. The solutions to this?
Yeah, solutions, as they have said, we need to get out of the space of blaming the one who has brought the medicine and interrogate the medicine. When you talk about budget cuts, this is exactly what we were told to do in the 90s. And as the Honorable Agnes Hape has reminded us, the president, in his own speeches, said at one point I had to cut off 60,000 soldiers.
Soldiers, yes.
Yeah. His army was about 100,000. Because we needed to find money to put into education.
Yes.
And health.
Yes.
Yeah. And the conversation at that point was, Mr. President, you really need educated soldiers. So that when you say I'm recruiting into the army, you can gladly say minimum is senior 4. But how do we get there? We need to fund education now. Right now we are giving, I think, about 100 shillings per child in primary school. That's not the person you want even to recruit as an askari, and where as a driver, as a border rider. That's not, but how do you improve that quality of education? You've got to cut somewhere. And as we have agreed, the cuts are not just going to be, don't spend. You must delete certain functions. Now, I might not delete districts, because these are the things we hold constant in economics. The politics.
Political economy issue.
The political economy issue.
It is a constant.
But I don't want to ignore it. How do I go around it? So I can bring a conversation and say, why don't we do regional programming? So that I stop looking at individual districts. Why don't I change and say this will be a general hospital? So this language of every district must have a hospital. A hospital is a monster institution. It requires a bigger number of population that should serve. And right now we have just passed new amendments that health center force should have 5 doctors. So why do I need a hospital in a district where I possibly already have 2 health center force? So those are policy reforms you want to do.
Yes.
But that will help you now, this language of spending 50 billion to tick a box that every district has which is non-functional. Your furrow machines are not working in Mulago.
Yeah.
You need to find money. That money cannot come from extra collections. I must cut somewhere. So for me, these are the tough things we need to get to. If reserves are going down, I don't have to go borrowing from IMF to beef up the reserves.
Yes. Yeah.
You can let the shilling depreciate and protect your reserves. What is wrong with a shilling of 3,900, which is a result of us failing to export? To solve it, don't go and borrow. So we have those tough decisions, but they must be politically accepted. Right now, as we speak, the cost on Parliament is 2 billion, more than 2 billion per day. That's Parliament.
What? Per day?
Yes, because they are 365
and State
days,
House?
and Parliament is over 700 billion.
How much is State
So literally,
House
that's
per
2
day?
billion.
How much is State House?
State House per
Let
day.
me start with Parliament.
So it doesn't work in
Because when we are talking about
It doesn't work in
independence,
Parliament either.
we are talking about the 3 arms of government.
Yes.
We are not talking about 3 governments. It is 3 arms of government.
The same government.
It is one government. And this government must go and
This
take
abnormal human
the
being that has
tough
3 arms.
decisions. You are going to appropriate a budget of 1 billion per district to do roads. Some of these districts don't have road equipment. Some of the districts have just about 40 kilometers of roads because they are tiny things.
They're small.
So why give Molata 1 billion? Well, maybe they could have done with 4. But it's also possible that to reach the other district, like a Piripirit, you are going through another district. So why give the other one? Why don't you have, now that's the regional programming you want to bring into the equation so that you stop the idea of every district must have a road equipment. Now the 1 billion is going to repair the dead road equipment and it will be finished. And we can't find new money. So that is the rationalization. It wasn't all about institutions. And I think I will go back to Jane. Jane possibly was not writing begging, was writing beginning, but you know smartphones. So eventually we end up as beggars.
Charles, can I ask Doctor a question?
Yes, please go
Would
ahead.
you and the team from the Ministry of Finance go and make a strong austerity recommendation to the President to downsize government the way you're talking? Would you support that?
I would be ready, but as I've said, are they ready to walk the talk with us? We did this with Mutebile.
Yes.
We did this with Kasami, as I mentioned to you.
But I think
the President would never come to us and say, I need this budget, and then we go borrowing. We say we're going to cut. As he told you, Muhakaniz, I think, is one of those who wrote the report after they had visited Ghana. A team of, I think, about 7 people, to say, should we liberalize the foreign exchange? Everybody said, you liberalize the dollar, will go through the roof. People would bring money and then take it away. But the report was very clear. They said, liberalize, and the President listened to it. So we need that conversation. And I've always told people, the President is the Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Article 155, I think Section 1 is very clear. The President shall cause to be presented to Parliament.
Yes.
So whatever you are debating is arising out of.
Okay.
And I don't want anybody to come to defend to you. They will say, we have heard you, let's go back to the President.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mumuza. 2 questions for the Honorable Minister have come up, and I need him to give us also a solution to the problems that have been outlined. Someone says, this person is called Dawoodi, and he says, Charles, this is a good discussion here. I have an issue to raise since the minister is your guest. Please ask the minister, Honorable Kabianga. In Kasese, trees which had been planted along the streets were cut down when the roads were to be tarmacked. This was under the USMID. Who is responsible? And then another person here is sending a message. Honorable, I had tipped you about this, that as the pensioners of Uganda Post and Telecommunications Corporation have not been paid for months, can the minister tell us also where is our money? And that you paid them some money some time ago and they still have a balance of over 200 billion. These are the things we are talking about. If we are saying there is, do we have money to pay pensioners?
Yeah, thank you, Charles.
And then you can make
I will start with the first questions.
Yes.
Because there were questions which came, like someone was saying, the Commissioner General runs to His Excellency the President.
Yeah.
Let me put it very clearly.
It was actually the taxpayers.
The taxpayers. Not the commission.
Business people.
The business people.
Business
They
people
go
run
for
to His
expansion.
Excellency.
Yes. There's a law in place already. Why do you have to run to the president?
Yeah, I think some of them run to the President. He's the fountain of honor. And just as you have said, he's the Minister of what?
Finance.
Of Finance. And therefore, sometimes when they are hard up, they rush to the President. But some of those things now are reducing because we have a very, very good Commissioner General right now. A Commissioner General who listens. If you send him a message, he replies it. We have to accept that. And he has tried his level best. We wouldn't have gone through COVID. But he tried his level best. And right now he's digitizing URA to close all the what? All the gaps. But you know, just as Dr. Mumbuza said, in our low-developed countries, politics also play a very good
The political economy.
And political economy.
But you see, Minister, when the Parliament passes a law that relates to tax collections, you've given the Commissioner General an increased, revenue line to meet. Then you go back to him and say, no, these ones are secret cows, don't touch them. You're making his work difficult.
I think now that I think here from this discussion, we have agreed in principle that tax exemptions should be minimized as much as possible, but we cannot eliminate them.
As part of tackling the challenge, let's first remove them.
We can't remove them. We can minimize.
But we are not even talking about tax exemption. We are talking about those who are not exempted but are refusing to pay.
No, those ones now is illegal.
Yes.
We should be,
and they can pay.
We should be tough on them.
They can
in
pay.
principle, we should agree. We should agree with that.
Yeah.
And we should ask the president actually to really send them to the Commissioner
General.
Exactly.
Let the man work.
That one I agree with you 100%.
Yes.
And another one was asking about whether Uganda is now middle income status. We were here, and I told the listeners, this middle income status is measured
for 3 years.
Exactly.
You have to achieve.
And you use one indicator, per capita income. And the calculation of per capita income is GDP divided by the population.
Yes.
They don't care which population has the money.
Or not.
Yes.
So they divide, the trouble with it is that they calculate Sudhir's wealth and add on to my poverty. And then say we are the same.
We are the same.
At this level.
Yes. And I think when we were still students of economics, we would discuss the merits and the demerits of...
Yeah, but also to add to that, the complication came that middle income status, the World Bank uses gross national income.
Yes.
Now, Uganda used gross domestic product. Now, gross domestic product is going to include what has been produced in Uganda, but does not belong to Ugandans.
Yes.
So at least Sudhir is Ugandan. But there is some other foreigner who has made his money in Uganda, which is part of our GDP. Don't dispute that to Ugandans. Allow this man to take it. Allow this man to take it. Then go and pick what Ugandans have made abroad and bring
one of the wealthiest district, I think, is it Amuru?
Is Noya.
Yes.
Because
you know
of
why?
the commercial farmers.
Because of the
now,
investors.
So they were technicality.
So Charles, it comes back to the original thing which I said.
Yeah.
Economics is all about keeping other things what? Exactly.
Honorable, respond to the issue of the 1,800 former staff.
Yes. The
Uganda Post and
the former staff of Uganda Post
What's up with their money?
No, Ministry of Finance has given us some money, and even our ministry still has some money to pay them, but we are getting conflicting advice from Attorney General. At first, they told us, look, you pay them, but they used lawyers.
Yeah.
And they went into an agreement with those lawyers that the lawyers will take, I think, 20%, something like that.
20%?
Yes, because they didn't have money.
When you are desperate.
The lawyers said, we are going to pursue this money. But if you ever get it, this is our cut. Now, the lawyers went and at one time garnished the accounts of Posta Uganda. But later on, and they started getting money from Posta Uganda accounts to the extent that they paid themselves around 4 billion. That's why Posta Uganda is also having problems. Then later, Ministry of Finance gives us money. So we got advice, the first advice, that you reduce the money for lawyers and give them the what? The barras. Then another team of workers again
formed another group. They said, for us who are not part of that arrangement, you should first give us the money, our money, and we pay the what? The lawyers. The lawyers said, no. These people, as soon as they get money, they will not what? Pay us. So we are again in a very big what? Dilemma.
Mediation now.
Yes, exactly. We have met these workers and told them, you people, you agree on something which is viable. Now, Attorney General now advised us that the issue of paying lawyers is not your issue. You pay the workers, they will see how to pay their what? Their lawyers. Now their lawyers have now run again to where? To court. We are having a problem, and we are telling these workers, please.
Of course, the court will support the lawyers.
Exactly.
They are birds of the same feather.
Exactly. And I would like to thank Parliament. Even next financial year, you are going to appropriate to us some money to clear the debt of these workers.
Hopefully, we'll find the money.
Hope we shall find the money. So the biggest problem is theirs. Those workers.
Yeah.
And I think
someone called Charles Odok says, I like how this minister is responding to issues articulated by his fellow panelists. He is knowledgeable, accepts where there is right, and denounces the wrong. Then he sent me an emoji.
But one person brought about the issue of government neglecting marketing of products.
Yeah.
I would like to tell viewers, sometimes we don't have products to market.
Yeah.
Our production capacity is, we cannot sustain a what? A market. Actually, the only product where we can sustain a market is coffee. Another product would be tourism. But you know, even tourism now, we have just caught up with the East African community. Because we didn't have the infrastructure in place. We didn't have in hotels where people can stay. But now, I'm happy Ugandans have really put up lodging facilities. And now we have a product to sell. But when it comes to other products, even maize itself, if we got a huge order, we cannot supply. The other time, there is a story which is told, actually Honorable Kasaija, the Minister of Finance, they told him to supply goats. And all of them, they said must be white.
Yes,
and he failed to supply. There is another man from Kasese, he is a rich man. He was told to supply meat to, he's a Muslim, to Middle East, one of the Middle East countries. He couldn't afford the tonnage they wanted. And so what we need is, as we have agreed, let us invest money where we have comparative advantage. And that is agriculture, tourism. By the way, there is no country in East Africa which can beat us in tourism. I think the only other country would be Congo, DRC. But because of the security, they cannot beat us.
Okay, there is someone called Dr. Samson Omudu Otengei. He says, politics has become a form of employment. One of the solutions, let government reduce benefits in political positions. For example, an MP should be paid 500,000 shillings only.
Yes.
This means...
No, that's a good one. That is getting realistic.
No, but that's a good one. For me, that's a good one.
He says
because it will raise the bar.
make only people willing to serve to go to parliament to
I
serve.
think that's a good one.
It is logical.
Now,
That's very logical. I agree with
the
him.
discussion, very informative indeed, like the viewers have said, but time is catching up with us. But I think we are discussing economics, we have discussed policies, economic policies, and I think that we, in just 2 minutes each, as we wind up, a kind of eulogy, your thoughts, your memory of how Uganda will remember the fallen former PSST, Mr. Keith Mwakanizi. He has been part of this economy for years, and some of you, many of you have worked with him, either in parliament, oversighting him, or even people like Omara, people like Dr. Fred actually working with him in office as well on economic issues and reforms and economic policies. Let me start with the Honorable Minister. Your memories of him is resting now. Our sympathies to the family. Condole him in 2 minutes as we wind up.
Yes, I can't say I worked closely with Keith Mwakanizi because I was serving at local government level. But I followed him. I followed 3 people. Chris Kasami, the late, Mutevire, who is also the late, and Keith Mwakanizi.
All of them.
And we really have to applaud them for being there for this country and for being very bold. But even at local government level, I was one of the leaders of the Urban Authorities Association. And we met Keith several times. Mainly we were demanding for more money. And he would tell us, and you know he used to have short sentences. There's no money. And that is all. He will not even add another one. But also, Keith had another, you would just get annoyed when he's talking. But he was also a very humorous man if you met him. Because now, after that, you would come back now as a mayor alone. And you say, you know, Keith, I have a problem which I must solve. Either my administration block is this. And you say, how much money do you want? You say, I want about 500 million. Okay, I'll give you 300. Go and tell your PS, tell your town clerk to write through the PS. And you do that, and Keith gives you what? 200 million, 300 million. That's what he was. And one other thing, he's the only person I saw telling ministers to go to hell in a meeting. Yes, I'm not going to do that. I don't want. And that is all. And you just see every minister or MP keep it quiet. And he would give reasons why he has done that. So we shall miss him. We shall really miss him. And I attended the service today in office of the Prime Minister. And you'd see workers talking about someone who was a real civil servant, who groomed civil servants, very friendly. And I think those who worked with him closely, they really miss him. Me, I worked with him from far, but I loved him. And may his soul rest in peace.
Thank you so much. Dr. Fred, your memories of Mr. Keith and what we shall remember him about.
I think I'll just build up on what Honorable has mentioned. Economics is a real, not a kind discipline. It's like doctors saying there is a problem here, we are cutting you. This child is breech, another one is across, we are going to operate. Doesn't matter whatever else you wanted. And tomorrow at the Economics Forum in Makerere University Business School in Nakawa, we are going to have a policy discussion on policy-induced distortions. things that disrupt the flow of economic principles because of bad policies. And some of these things that would come to cabinet is where we would see that this policy is really going to distort the fundamentals that would hold the economy strong. And he would take on the responsibility to speak to cabinet, because Mums as an advisor, Mums as you are not speaking in those spaces. So he would come up and say, with all due respect, ministers, this is not going to work. So you had that person, because at times that's what you want to speak, truth to power. The ministers are your supervisors, but you really don't want to let them go off. And as is mentioned, these were the people when everybody was saying, we need to give subsidies, remove taxes on petrol. These things has come. We said, no way, don't follow the Kenyan. Kenya has already given us, let the Kenyans do their thing. And we are glad that people of this nature and us, we had the conversations, as Honorable Mara said, I'm looking forward to such candid discussions with the president on these economic principles and policies, so that we leave him to take the decision, but at least we give him all the candid, clear evidence, and economic is always on one hand, the decision making is for the president. So we'll put before him and say, if you take this route, these are the consequences. You take this route, these are the consequences. Mr. President, you will get back to us. That would be your kiss. And I think we will still miss out on those kinds of arrogance, but the arrogance which says the medicine is bitter, but it is the only way out. You guys, we are locking you down.
No sugar coating.
There is COVID.
No sugar coating.
Get locked down until a solution is found, not by us, but by the planet. And when the solution came, he said, vaccination. No mask, no towel. No vaccination, no this. Now here we are. So some of these decisions are not for conversations. And I think that's one thing I learned from him, that there comes a time when you must stand your ground. Doesn't matter who you are talking to. Let them take their decision, but at least they will remember you. So there was a man or a woman who told me this was the way to go.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mara, memories of Mr. Keith.
Thank you, Charles. Let me start at
his economics.
Yes, at a personal level, when he was the former board chairman of Housing Finance Bank, and at one particular point they were looking for another director who is a banker. So they searched around and they got my CV. So he said, when he looked at my CV, he said, "This is the man we have been waiting for." So I got appointed, and he had not met me, didn't know me, and I got appointed to the Board of Housing Finance, where I served for 4.5 years until I joined Parliament. That's when I voluntarily left. So when I met him, and he said, "So you're Domara?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "I read your CV. Your CV is very good. Very good. You see, the system works." He told me that. The system works. You can see, you got a job. I didn't know you.
He applied the political economy.
On you.
On you.
So he had not met me. He said he just read the CV and he said, "This is the." That's one. The second one is that, true to his character, I think the three gentlemen who are passed on, may God save their souls, is actually the late Kasame, Mutabile, Dr. Mutabile, and him. I think they were so instrumental in changing the economic direction of our country and really putting in place macroeconomic policies that brought in stability for a very long period of time. And I think the president recognized that Professor Mutabile and even himself were really the pillars during the early days of the NRM government. The third one was actually now when I had a very intensive engagement with him during PACOP, the Presidential Advisory Committee on Budget, and Honorable Dr. Agnes was one of the team members that were appointed there. We had a very robust debate. And on the same matters, looking at the revenue and where government resources should go. And I remember when I presented and I went out for coffee, he said, "I want Omara to be back here before I make my comments." And we kind of really built in a point of convergence. And I was picking a lot of things from him. And we agreed that we'll be meeting from time to time. So later on, we met twice in the bank over a period of time. And at the last moment, I didn't know actually he was going to go. He asked me, Honorable, let's take a photo. And he used his phone. So there's a lady in the bank at Forest Mall who took our photo. And he was gracious enough to send it to me. That's the only memory of him that I have. Okay. But most importantly, I think he had a great mind. He was one of those great economists that this country has lost. And I will, at a personal level, and the country too, will miss him deeply. May God put his soul in eternal peace.
Okay. Honorable Leper?
Yeah, at a personal level, I can say I was Director of Finance and Administration for some government company, Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company, and he was our board chair. The interaction was, of course, work-related. But one-on-one encounter I had with him was, I used to work with what used to be Accountability Sector Secretariat, which was housed in the Ministry of Finance. And somehow I was managing some EU-funded project. And we were funding 18 accountability sector institutions, and one of which was the Ministry of Finance. There is a staff in the Ministry of Finance who wanted to travel somewhere for graduation. But I think we're not going to facilitate, and had to go to PSST to intervene, and he summoned me to his office. But what's really interesting was, that's when I tested his honesty. He had the ability to say, fun. He said, actually, this officer is not going for a workshop, as they have alleged. They are going for graduation. She just wants money to go for graduation. Yeah, he said it. So if she didn't say it, let me tell you, actually she just wants to go for graduation. So find a way of helping her. As simple as that. You know, honesty or integrity is being able to be honest even when you are at liberty to lie.
When you are at liberty to lie.
Yes. But he wasn't at liberty, he was a boss, he was a big man. So that one was just what he did. We also used to hear stories in the Ministry of Finance, of course, that even meetings where the Minister of Finance would chair. If he hasn't arrived, the meeting will not take off. So the minister would have to wait for him. Because definitely the resource he had, the resource he had. So what you remove, it is his word that would take the day. So what I'm only saying is, we really hope we can have such technocrats who can share candidly, and what we're discussing, who can really advise government, even if it means very painful advice.
People fear losing jobs.
But this is a man.
They'll chase you away.
Yeah, but this is a man who used to do that, and people are talking and appreciating about it.
Yeah.
We hope we can get such people and help us really manage these critical aspects of managing this country.
And I think as she comes, people need to know that sometimes you actually secure your job by being truthful and candid.
Opportunism is
more expensive.
No, it's very expensive.
Very expensive. Wonderful argument.
Thank you.
Your memories
thank you very much. I knew Keith in the last 4 years that I worked as the chairperson, Local Government Finance Commission. And because my mandate then was to advise government on local government financing and budget allocations in local government. And I would very frequently really engage with him. And at one point, I was a technical advisor to OWC. And that again, it made me to really have a lot of interaction with him. And I remembered him very vividly during the COVID. We were asked to analyze the budget and repurpose it based on that particular kind of environment. And we did our part, and he would tell you, this one no, this one yes, this one we may see. The may see was not like when we bring for May, I think, and we were there, I remember, with Dr. Muhumuza. And I saw this person who understood the economy, understood what would work and what would not work. And I would term in a realist, really. That being realistic in whatever we do and say, I think he was that person. And for me, I think that's why the economy has been resilient enough, and the way we see it, I think it was based on the foundation that he laid. My interaction with him also gave me this privilege that he is really one of that very strong pillar of public finance management systems and even laws. And I think he's one of those who championed the Public Finance Management Act, although with its gaps, but at least he was able to really steer that process, that as a country, we need a system that would help us manage that. And finally, I am one of those that advocate for rural financing as a driver or a trigger of economic growth. I know I have my colleague economists who are more at macro level, you know, microeconomic policies and all that. But Keith was one of those very few economists that would look down and look up. And I appreciated that. But I remember one experience where we were in State House with the local government leaders. I don't know whether my super mayor was there. And the local government fraternity were lobbying for an increased local government budgets. And then he stood up and said, Mr. President, all this would have happened if we stopped creating new districts.
Yeah.
In front of, imagine, 100+ leaders going to lobby for money. And for him, he came from that angle that all this would have happened if we agreed now that we are not going to create any more local governments. And remember, we were talking about politics. The local government, the district creations were actually as a result of that political economy that we are talking about. So that boldness and that reality, you know, being realistic, for me is something that this country needs the most at this time. And we'll really miss him. And with the fraternity of the economists in this country, I think we've really missed one of our very critical pillars that would have helped us possibly maneuver a bit faster than we are trying now, because he understood the economy, as my colleagues have just said. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
Charles,
Thank you very much.
Charles, there is one question someone asked from Kasese, and
Yeah.
you know I come from there.
Yeah.
So he's waiting. About using trees.
Yes.
No, the trees will be replaced. Because, you know, when you want to eat an omelette, you must break the egg. They are first working on the road, but there is money set aside for beautification. And tree planting is part of beautification. Money actually for environment and HIV/AIDS related activities.
Okay.
So those trees will be replaced.
Okay, that's fine. I had wanted to just add about, you know, my memory of Keith came from that time. I think it must have been around 2015.
Okay.
2015 to
Yes.
16.
Yeah.
When the local governments came up, that was the time they proposed many local government units to be expanded. And he wrote, and when we got it as journalists, you know, serving Parliament, when we got the letter, they leaked the letter to us, and everybody, you know, when you get such documents, the first thing you rush for authenticity is to check who is the author, and they had signed it. Then MPs were so angry because I think they had made promises. You guys, they had made promises to the people. So they summoned him to Parliament. And I attended that meeting. It was in one of the committee rooms this side. It was packed. And he sat and listened to them, and you know, like the boldness and the courage and the honesty with which he advised the government. He said, you see, you MPs, you have the power is yours. Mine is advice, but I've written it. I've written, so you take the decision. Mine is...
It's like, do it the way you want.
And he said, you have the power to create the units, the local government units, but mine, I'm advising you, and the impact will affect all of us. And you can now imagine some of the things that he kept talking about. And of course, I would go to Ministry of Finance, I would meet him. I would once in a while, though he used to fear interacting with the media, coming on shows, but we would talk, and he would tell me, when I called him, he would say, my view is this. And what you would notice in him is that transparency. You know, he didn't have any, but for me, I loved that. And I think in economics, I think what we lack and miss as a country is that, you know, that confidence and the boldness to tell truth to power. Because if you are invited by the president, and I think that is what we miss in a lot of
leaders,
you know, some of our leaders. When the president invites you and says, I want advice, he wants perhaps you to tell him the truth. He wants the truth.
Yes.
And just imagine you're telling the truth or taking a decision to determine so many things about 46 million people. So many of us lack that confidence and boldness to tell the leaders the truth. And for me, I think that that's what I will miss in him. Indeed, may he rest in peace. Our sympathies again to the family and to all the rest others who have lost their loved ones. I think we need to end it here. Good debate it was, and reflections. I want to thank all of you. The Honorable Minister, thank you very much for, that's the hot seat, so you have handled it well. To the technocrats, to your technocrats,
they have given advice.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muhumuza. Thank you very much. Banker Omara Paul, thank you, Honorable Aleper, for making your maiden appearance, and it was worth it. Now you are a member here. Come again next time. And Honorable Apea Agnes, we thank you all very much from the entire technical team here at Behind the Headlines at UBC. We want to thank you all very much, and God bless you all, and be okay and be healthy, and we thank you. Good night.
Assalamu alaikum.
Baganda bafefe na Uganda tuso omulanga gwange eri eggwanga lyonna okutwalira awamu twekwate nnyo ku tteeka lya Allah erigamba nti wa'tasimu bihablillahi jami'a wala tafarraqu. Etteeka eryo teryagambibwa bali bokka abaaliwo mu biseera ebyo, wabula lijja ne liranda ne litukwatako olwaleero. Kyova olaba obuzibu bwe tulina olwaleero tubuuliza we buva wa okuba nti abasiraamu tweyuzaayiza obulererere mu buntuntu obutalina makulu mu maaso ga Allah, olw'ensonga nti olwaleero ojjakeera ku nkya ng'omuntu akutawaanya oba akuwaga okukola kino oba akuwaga ekikola kino mu maaso ga Allah ng'osigadde wekka ng'olina okweyanuukulira ebibuuzo byo wekka, nga noono abadde akuwaga talinawo, osigadde ki olwo lwannabunigina ng'ekikutaasa mirimo gyo enkolaganayo. Baganda bange ng'abasiraamu njagala tukozesa ekigambo ekiyitibwa al muamala baina al akhlaqi, enkolagana wakati w'ebitonde. Ebitonde tekitegeeza kubeera musiraamu na musiraamu yekka, ebitonde biviira ddala okuva ku biwuka ku binyonyi nebituuka ne ku bisolo okutuusa ebituuka ku ffe ng'abantu nga tutandikidde era enkolagana wakati w'ebitonde. Kyova olaba nti obusiraamu butugaana nga tutandikidde ku biwuka butugaana okuleeta omuliro n'oyokya oba ebiwuka biryawo n'oleeta omuliro n'obyokya. Owulidde olaba n'enkwata gy'okwatamu ekinyonyi enkoko oba ki ng'ogenda ogisala. Obusiraamu bwakulaga enkolagana gy'olina okuteekawo ne bukuteekawo enkolagana wakati wo n'ebisolo engeri gy'olina okuyisaamu ekisolo ng'ogenda owadde kisala oba okitwala ku nsiko oba engeri gy'olina enkolagana nakyo. N'olwekyo oba Allah atulaga n'omubaka Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam enkolagana y'ebinyonyi ku bisolo naki nefe abantu abasobola okwawulawo kiba kyansonyi okulaba nga tetusobola kutuula wansi kumanya nsobi zaffe oba ki ne tuteesa ne tuba nga tujjawo ki enjawukana eyo. Enjawukana bwe lwebeerawo eba etuzza rivansi nene nnyo 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 ne tufiirwa okulaakulana n'okweddaabula okwali badde tukolera nga tuli wamu. Ate abasiraamu muteekwa okumanya nti buli obeera manya olina omulabe akiraba obubi ng'okolagana ne gundi n'olwekyo alina okukureyetingawo okutudivaidinga okulaba nga bakwaki nga batwawula. Ebyo byonna bwe tunaabikwata eggwanga lyaffe n'obusiraamu tujja kufunamu. Olw'ensonga olwaleero ekizibu ekigwa ku musiraamu gundi tekigamba olwaleero tubijjeyo bigamba nti oyo waffe